Growing your e-commerce business comes with plenty of hurdles, but shipping shouldn't be one of them. Well, here's some good news. Powerful e-commerce shipping software called ShipExcel from Pitney Bowes. With ShipExcel, you can generate discounted shipping labels for both online and offline orders. That saves time and money, with everything right at your fingertips. Start your free trial of ShipExcel from Pitney Bowes today.
Right now, at the Home Depot, you'll find storage solutions made to fit your needs. Grab an HDX Tough Tote to protect your tools. Or keep your sports equipment contained with reinforced snap-fit lids. Or stack up and make better use of your space with bins and totes built to last. Whatever you're storing, we've got the gear to keep it organized and protected at the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
This week on What the Hack with Adam Levin, we're talking with Dr. David Maimon of Georgia State University about the role that driver's licenses play in identity theft.
How's life now that everybody has your driver's license, Travis?
Not great. I'm actually pretty paranoid about it.
So the news story was that driver's license information in Oregon, Louisiana, as well as a number of federal agencies had been compromised in the past few days.
Totally cool. Well, good thing they can't do anything with driver's license information. Oh, they can. That's right. They can do lots of stuff with your driver's license.
Yeah, and apparently it was pretty all-encompassing. So everyone in the state with a driver's license, along with the last 4 digits of their social security number, their name, address.
Well, nobody was left behind.
Well, it's convenient then that Adam found us this week's guest from Georgia State University. We couldn't possibly be better situated to talk about this thing that is just about to ruin your life, Travis.
And with that, welcome to What the Hack, a show about hackers, scammers, and the people they go after. I'm Adam Levin.
I'm Beau Friedlander.
And I'm Travis Taylor.
Dr. Maimon, welcome to our show. We're very excited to have you. So you're an expert on identity theft. Does that mean you're also a criminal psychologist, a sociologist?
No. So first of all, an expert in identity theft. I think the criminals are the expert in identity theft. I'm just trying to understand what is it that these guys are doing and working on, and ways to protect ourselves, way to protect organizations from the real expert. I am a sociologist who converted to criminologist, but at the end of it, criminologists are very interdisciplinary in the way they do their work. So a lot of sociology, a lot of psychology, a lot of geography, a lot of information science, a lot of computer science, a lot of cybersecurity.
As a criminologist, you began your work years ago looking at the effects of these crimes or the kinds of people that commit them. What was your focus?
Yeah, when I first started my academic career, I really tried to understand how the interaction between sociological factors, psychological factors, contributes to deviant outcomes among adolescents and youth.
And what sort of crimes were you looking at back then?
So at the beginning of my career, I was focusing more on violent crimes, simple assaults, aggravated assault.
And what drew you into this field in the first place?
So when I was a kid, I grew up in a crappy neighborhood, and many of my friends turned out to be criminals. And I really tried to figure out what prevented me from being on their side.
Sure.
And was that because they made so much more money than you did? Or no, I'm kidding.
That's because they were smarter maybe than I am.
Yeah.
And they knew they simply knew how to sort of play the game, evading detection in a better way than I am.
What did you find? What differentiated you from, let's say, your friends who went into crime?
To tell you the truth, researching this for a while, I simply lacked the kahunas to do what my other friends did. Once you start diving into this and understanding chronological theories and all that, it looks like there are a couple of things there, right, that differentiated me from them with respect to the willingness to break the law. I think the first one is attachment to family. I was very attached, still I'm very attached to my family, and the image of my father telling me, don't embarrass me, was always there. I think my other friends, my peers, maybe did not have the same level of attachment to their family. The other thing is the willingness to take risks. I'm very conservative in my willingness to take risks, and I find that many of my former friends were more willing to gamble. I think these are the major things which nudged me into different direction than the direction that some of my friends decided to take.
What is the difference you see between violent criminals and nonviolent criminals? People who commit scams, who hide behind a computer screen and do their dirty deeds.
There's actually some research on this issue. It looks like the fraudsters tend to be older, we tend to have a higher representation of female among fraudsters. Go figure. They tend to be more educated, and they tend to have better ability planning ahead than violent offenders. This is essentially what the research, and not my research, but the research which other folks produced and published says about the differences between violent and non-violent offenders.
And when you say older, is that like a 18 to 25, 25 to 40, or what age range are you referring to?
So violent offender, if you think about the profile, it'll be adolescents to, I would say, 30.
Mhm.
Fraudsters, we're talking about 24 to 40 with heavy sort of emphasis on older folks. We're talking about usually folks 27 to 40, something like that.
How did you get involved with identity theft?
I mean, I started with interest in violent crime and suicide. And then when I graduated, I didn't want to study that anymore. And I wanted to just stop doing what I was doing back then, which was the first year in my academic career. I was a professor in the University of Miami. So I told my wife, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm not interested. And what I really wanted to do back then was to go to Australia and chase the giant squid. Back then, there weren't too many images and videos of the giant squid. And I don't know if you know, the giant squid is this beast, amazing, huge eyes. And that creature lives in the deep. And to tell the truth, I think of myself as a scientist because I really am curious about the world and whatever we have around us. And so what I really wanted to do was I wanted to discover things, and I wanted to get into a submarine, chase the giant squid, understand the anglerfish, all the different types of anglerfishes that they're out, and really explore the deeps. But when I approached my wife with this idea, she said, listen, I don't want to be poor for 4 more years, so go ahead, do that, but do it by yourself. I'm not joining you for that trip. So I love my wife, I love my kids, and we talked about attachment earlier, right? I shifted my attachment or expanded my attachment to my family, my wife and kids. So I decided that I'm not going to do that. I will continue to do criminological research, but I had to find something that will make me happy. And that is where I found cybercrime. Back then, there wasn't really a whole lot of good research in focusing on those specific crimes. And I decided that this area is potentially the niche I could study and replace it with the deeps.
So you traded your anglerfish for catfish. So David, when was this? When are we talking about?
That was around 2010, the end of 2010, beginning of 2011.
So very early on, really, in the trajectory of what has now become a scourge.
Yeah, very early in my career. And to tell the truth, I got lucky in the sense that I was able to build a body of research which helps carry me till today.
One thing that we've heard time and again from some of the guests that we've had on the show is that COVID has had a massive impact on cybercrime and scams in general. I was just wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I did a lot of research before COVID. And one of the interesting things in my career that happened before COVID is I got this opportunity to join Georgia State and open my own research center and work with my own group. And we moved from Maryland to Atlanta in 2018. It was the late 2018, the beginning of 2019. COVID hit 2020. And so what happened in this year and a half long window that we had between my move to Atlanta and COVID hitting was me opening the group and recruiting students, working on evidence-based cybersecurity projects. One of the projects was focused on the darknet and online markets on communication platform. So during that year and a half long period, I had many students diving into those markets, establishing presence under fictitious identities, listening to what people were saying, and collecting massive amount of data on a daily basis. So when COVID hit, we saw how the markets respond to that. We saw how the vendors responding to it, how the drug dealers responded to that, how the fraudsters responded to that, how the customer responded to that, how the market adjusted. And this is something we do till today. I mean, we still study those markets. We still study the vendors, the customers on a systematic manner. But because we were doing a lot before COVID, we had a lot to compare when COVID actually hit. So one of the first things we've seen on the markets when COVID hit was drug dealers shifting gears and offering all kind of new commodities for sale. For example, some of the drug dealers we monitored at the beginning of the pandemic focused on selling toilet papers. They were focused on selling face masks. They were focused on selling Clorox and other types of sanitizers, right? So it was really interesting to see how the market responded to the shortage of commodities we had in the legitimate economy, right? So face masks was one of the things that blew our mind, right? Because at some point here in the United States, you went to Target, you went wherever, and you couldn't find face masks. And then you've seen those criminals offering boxes of face masks for sale. And they uploaded videos showing their storages and the amount of boxes they have with face masks. And we're trying to figure out how these guys are getting those face masks where we all, struggle to find one. And so we ran an investigation and started talking to people on the markets, and quite quickly we realized how they do that. Essentially, most of the masks came from Thailand. And what the criminals were doing was they went to trash cans and they took the used face masks, washed them, ironed them, and then shipped them to whoever was interested in that. So really interesting angle and adoption of the market to the need that we all had in face masks.
That is so disturbing, but also interesting. I remember when people were like, "Oh, it's nothing," and every fiber of my Ashkenazi genes were like, "It's something. Are you nuts?" Anyway, so I went to Home Depot because, I am definitely one of the world's biggest hypochondriacs, and I found masks and I bought some, but I only got 20 because I'm a moral person and I didn't want to hoard them. I didn't even know how we were going to be using them yet. And the next time I went back, it was a week later, they were all gone, sold out. And there was a guy outside with a truckload of them selling them for, an astronomical price. Who's a price gouger? Criminal.
During a crisis, to be gouging prices is criminal.
Well, the real crime, actually, turns out, thank you, Professor Maimon, was people pulling them out of the garbage, cleaning them, and reselling them. You've ruined my day, Professor Maimon.
This episode is brought to you by the world's first reposado from Tequila Herradura. Made with slow-cooked, hand-harvested agave sealed into oak barrels and aged 11 months. Before being enjoyed in your glass. Experience the world's first reposado, Tequila Herradura. Please drink responsibly. Responsibility.org. Tequila Herradura. 40% alcohol by volume. Imported by Brown-Forman, Louisville, Kentucky. Herradura is a registered trademark. Copyright 2025 Brown-Forman Corporation.
This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Summer's almost out and fall's calling. Luckily, Nordstrom has everything you need for the season ahead, all under $100. Discover new arrivals from your favorite brands like Mango, Princess Polly, Wave, Free People, BDG, and more. Whether you're planning a last-minute getaway, heading back to class, or refreshing your office looks, you'll find the latest trends and beauty must-haves without breaking your budget. It's easy, too, with free shipping, free returns, and in-store order pickup. Shop today, in stores, and at Nordstrom.com.
Welcome back. Just before the break, we were talking to Dr. Maimon about some of the scams that went wild during COVID, and in particular, those involving the sale of protective gear at exorbitant prices, which is disgusting on so many levels. Wasn't there even a larger market for fraudulent driver's licenses than what we normally see?
So yeah, to answer the question shortly, yes.
How did driver's license related scams become so prevalent during the pandemic?
So we've been monitoring the market systematically on a daily basis, and we've seen the criminals working on different types of crimes, different types of frauds throughout the pandemic. Fairly early to the pandemic, we're talking about mid 2022, we started to see many fraudsters uploading screenshots of their fraudulent applications to unemployment and SBA loans. We started to see an increase in the number of screenshots, the number of videos that these guys were uploading. We saw an increase in the volume of tutorials these guys were uploading. And at some point with one of our sponsors, what we did was we started to count the number of application we've seen, number of videos we've seen, numbers of SBA loan application we've seen per state. And we started doing this in a systematic manner. We started to track things in 2020 with respect to unemployment benefits requests that we've seen, the videos, the screenshots that the criminals uploaded from the actual website where they applied for unemployment, as well as submitted the SBA loans. And we started to count the number of videos, the number of posts we've seen coming from all over the country. In early 2020, mid 2020, it wasn't really a whole lot going on. But in late 2020, the beginning of 2021, we started to see how things were exploding and diffusing all around the country. And of course, one of the things that we've seen playing a very important role in the diffusion of those applications was the fake driver licenses that the criminals were able to manufacture very cheaply, very quickly, in very high quality. In many of the applications, we've seen the criminals presenting a driver license, a fake driver license with an identity on it. And we've seen how they used the driver license to simply type in and record all the information they needed to record on the Department of Labor, right, of all the relevant states' websites, and simply getting improved in very high rate. At some point, and I would say at the beginning of this, we started to see criminals selling tutorials of how to bypass some of the security mechanism that many states embraced and deployed in the context of their verification process. And we started shouting all over the place, hey, I mean, these guys know how to bypass this company's security mechanism and that company's security mechanism. And unfortunately, we didn't get too much attention to our calls.
I think one of the biggest questions I have, and I know it's not really possible to get inside every scammer's head, but what was motivating them between identity theft and the government program scams and the like?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they want money.
But what about the guys doing the tutorials and the like?
So those guys were doing tutorials. You have to understand, I mean, at this point, and even earlier, right, when we're talking about 2020, we were talking about a very sophisticated supply chain. So we're not talking about the teenager who are looking to just kill some time, and so they submit this fraudulent application trying to get some money from the government. No, we're not there anymore, and we weren't there in 2020. We were experiencing the operation of very sophisticated supply chains, which had access to our identities, took our identities, manufactured fake driver licenses with the criminal images, bypassing all the security mechanisms you can imagine in order to get this money. So profit is the number one reason for why these guys are doing this. What we are seeing out there, the amount of money we're seeing out there, we are talking about folks doing this for profit. It's easy. There's really no deterrence right now. So the probability that they will be caught for their operation and go to jail is relatively low. In terms of potential profits, these guys can make millions of dollars and invest not a whole lot of time in the operation.
And if you're listening, guys out there, and you're going to go and try your hand at some of these crimes, just remember that David and the whole crew at What the Hack get 25% of everything you bring in. So we'll take that via Venmo or through Bitcoin.
Wait, only 25%? Come on.
Last time we tried to take more, we ended up almost becoming violent criminals. So no.
What are some of the common methods that people use in order to create fake driver's licenses and then authenticate fraudulent identities?
So again, at this point, we're talking about a very elaborated operation, fetching the identities, using the identities in order to manufacture the fake driver licenses, sometimes manufacturing fake documents, which will allow you to go to the DMV office and simply get tested, take the driving test, and get a real driver license under fictitious identity. Then you can really do a lot of damage. We see that happens a lot. So the operation is so sophisticated and the supply chain is so elaborated at this point, where you have producers, the individuals get the identities from all kind of sources, including, of course, the data dumps that we're all familiar with from different breaches that the media keeps talking about every now and then. But to tell the truth, now, most of the identities we're getting, or the criminals are getting, really comes from the street. I'm sure you guys know, at this point in our society, we have some kind of a crisis with respect to the way the mail is being delivered to our houses, a lot of stolen mail. A lot of what is going through that stolen mail are identities. And so think about the checks people send in order to pay their bills. Think about the debit cards that banks are sending to their customers in order to start working with their bank accounts. Think about the huge number of identities that are being delivered physically, right? From one residential environment to a company or whatever. The criminals target those envelopes. And so now they have on their disposal millions of identities that they can use with not a problem.
Do you think, for instance, that more of existing licenses are altered, or they're making totally new licenses whole cloth? What do you see more of?
So in terms of the suppliers, right, those individuals who fetch the identity. So if you want to have a fake driver license, you have to have an identity to work with. So you need to have suppliers. So one of the suppliers we're familiar with and that we see, and traditional suppliers, are the hackers. They have a data dumps that you can purchase for reasonable prices, and then you have millions of identities that you can start working with. What changed during the last 3 years or so is the availability of identities on the street in a different manner than it was in the past, where you can think about the Russian and the Chinese and the North Korean and all these getting access to those dumps with our identities and using them in order to open a new bank account and try to steal some money from the banks and open credit lines on our behalf. Now we have local groups who have access to all those stolen identities. And they also can physically get inside the bank with a fake driver license and open a bank account, and then establish a credit line and ask for a loan and open a business and then take another loan on behalf of the business, and so on and so forth. What we're seeing today is definitely, when we are looking at the platforms we oversee, we see a very dramatic increase in the volume of fake driver licenses that these criminals manufacture. But what changed in comparison to what we've seen in the past is the quality of the driver licenses.
David, so my children are, one of them is old enough to drink and one of them is not old enough to drink. Both of them, when they were not old enough to drink, had IDs that allowed them to drink legally, illegally, because they were able to get driver's licenses. And these driver's licenses were very good. They scanned. If they scanned it at the bar, it showed up as a valid driver's license. They paid $60 for them. And my daughter recently pointed out, Dad, $60 is a lot for a 15-year-old. It's not very much for a criminal. Is that what we're talking about? Is that the kind of ID that you're talking about?
We're talking about IDs which are even more sophisticated and even higher quality than the driver license that you just described. So most of the driver licenses will definitely go through the scan, but some of the driver licenses, or many of the driver licenses that we see, can also have the UV on them. And once you the driver license, turn on the UV light, you see all the security controls that the states need to have on the driver licenses. It's mind-boggling to see how sophisticated and how good those driver licenses are in terms of the security controls that the criminals know they need to have on those driver licenses. Very difficult, very complicated to detect fake licenses, especially when you don't have the appropriate means to do that. Now, remember, one of the things we were talking about earlier is that some criminals, they print fake utility bills, they print fake Social Security cards, and they actually go to the DMV office, take the driving test, and they get the real driver license with all the controls. What are you going to do about that? I mean, you have fictitious identity with real driver license, and now the person who owns the driver license can start doing some damage.
We know that these driver's licenses played an enormous role in unemployment compensation fraud. So what are some of the weaknesses in the unemployment compensation system that they were able to exploit effectively?
Folks simply did not have the appropriate way to verify the identity of those individuals who applied for the unemployment benefit as well as for the SBA loans. I know that there were attempts to hire all those companies. I know that the companies that many states have hired promised a lot, but at the end of the day, if you listen to some of the congressional hearings, you know by now that many of those companies simply fail to deliver on their promises.
And there was also the element of time. So people were actually out of work and needed money, and they needed these benefits, and the states had to move quickly, and that's always a recipe for disaster or a recipe for success for a criminal, no?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the fact that you have people doing things fast without thinking about this, without having the appropriate verification process, played a very important role. The very sad outcome, we're talking about the greatest heist of all time at this point. Some of the estimates we're talking about of a theft of $140 billion over a period of 2 months. That's a lot of money, especially if you think about other famous heists that we had in our society, like the Bernie Madoff heist and a few others. $145 billion that we printed and we simply gave as a present to the criminals.
So we know that so many people were negatively affected by this. There were all kinds of repercussions of this. What steps should we be taking in order to support and help those victims recover from these scams?
So SBA loans, I may be in the better position to discuss, because those loans, the victims really need to return to the government. In the context of unemployment benefits, at the end of the day, it is my understanding that if you've been sent a check, or the criminal have been sent a check under your name, you're not liable. What is in jeopardy at the end of the day is your identity. So the criminal now have your identity, and he or she can start manufacturing driver licenses with your name on, and then open bank accounts, take credit lines, take loans under your name, and so on and so forth.
And there's also the chance that they could use it to commit a crime and then give my identity as the person who did the crime, yes?
Think about what you can do with a driver license, a fake driver license. You can go into a gun shop, purchase a gun under my name, commit a crime, and then the gun is registered to me. Leave the gun in the crime scene. The gun is registered to me. So I'm the first person that the police will actually come and start investigating. Think about the health insurance and medical costs that a person may be liable for. There's the issue of identity theft in our country touches so many areas. And unfortunately, I don't see us really thinking about an effective way to come up with a solution that will address all these issues.
David, it sounds to me that that driver's licenses in many very crucial ways have replaced our Social Security numbers as the skeleton key to all kinds of identity-related crime. So, given the fact that it is quite possible with all these data dumps and compromises that any one of us could be the victim of this sort of identity crime, what should people do to stay safe? in this new threat environment?
It's a great question. I think that the most important thing for folks to do is purchase an identity theft protection plan. There's several companies out there, and the protection plan is quite good. The second step is, of course, freeze all your credit line. Make sure that nobody can take a loan under your name. That is a very important thing folks need to do. So the last thing that people should be aware of is Check System. It's a very important organization that help track the bank accounts that are signed under their identity. If you place a credit freeze on your on your credit lines, that essentially means that no one can take a loan under your name. And every time that a company will search for your credit score, you will get a ping, and so you will know that someone has looked at your identity. But the fact that no one will be able to take a loan or a mortgage under your name doesn't necessarily mean that they cannot open a bank account under your name. That is way easier than you can think of. And so Check System is this organization which monitors the bank accounts that each identity in our society has and keep track on that. And I think folks needs to be aware of this resource, because if someone did open a bank account under your name, one of the things that we are seeing the criminals do is they simply grow the account and then they sell the account for folks who launder money or use the accounts for any other types of nefarious purposes. And at the end of the day, it's your name that is under the account. So people definitely to pay attention to Check System and ask for reports that Check System produce, just to make sure that their name is not being used to open a bank account in other states.
Doesn't Check Systems also track overdrafts that go on for a long time to the point where they shut the account?
Yes, that's part of what they do, yeah. I strongly recommend folks to at least ask for an initial report of the number of bank accounts which are associated with their name, and then take it from them. If they identify bank accounts that they're not familiar with, bank accounts that they haven't opened, they should definitely do something about that.
And it's not spelled CHECKS.
That's right.
It's spelled CHEX.
It's Wednesday, Adams. I see you're trying to distract yourself from your own banal thoughts. Let me help. Here's a recording thing made of my latest root canal.
Wednesday Season 2 is now playing only on Netflix.
She's made up her mind to live pretty smart. Learn to budget responsibly right from the start. She spends a little less and puts more into savings. Keeps her blood pressure low and credit score raises. She's cutting debt right out of her life. She tracks her cash flow on a spreadsheet at night.
Boring money moves make kinda lame songs, but they sound pretty sweet to your wallet. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865.
David, we can't thank you enough for being on the show. I mean, it was extremely enlightening. We love your take on these things. And where should people go if they want to learn more about you or Georgia State University's work in this area?
To learn more about what we do, folks can go to ebcs.gsu.edu.
That's ebcs.gsu.edu.
We'll put a link up to that on our website as well.
Thank you.
When these types of identity theft happen, a lot of people say, what can we do to help the people who are victims of this?
Well, it turns out there's a ton, actually.
I think government agencies and nonprofits need to establish some victim support services to provide not just counseling, but also legal assistance and financial guidance. I think a lot of people end up feeling really lost in this whole process.
That's true. And that part of that is making it easier to report what happened and try to get right again.
Plus, it's also important that we enhance our education programs. We got to make people more aware.
part of that is financial institutions and credit bureaus need to get into a more of a collaborative mode, right? They need to start thinking like, okay, this is a group effort here. We have to help people stay safe, and they have to be proactive in keeping themselves safe.
And at the same time, we really need to make the legal protections for victims stronger. I mean, I know this does affect organizations, but the individuals who this stuff is happening to can find themselves in a lot of trouble.
They also need stronger support programs. There's not enough victim support.
There's not enough of anything. You know what there's enough of? Crime. That's it. There's enough. There's plenty of crime happening. There's not a lot of let's stop the crime. And, that's why we do the show. That's why people listen to the show. And anybody who's listening to the show is part of the solution. That's how I see it.
No, they really are. And as I've said for years, it's all about the 3 C's: cooperation, communication, and collaboration. Consumers, government, businesses, media, all together. Educate, support, stand up for the people who have been victimized.
Okay, well, all right then. Travis, you're screwed.
Sounds like it. I have the entire states of Oregon and Louisiana to say the same with me. So,
Travis, it's not just you. You're joined by millions of other Americans in the South and the West.
Well, it's a good thing we just learned about check systems. So, Travis, what are you going to do now?
we're going to talk about it in the Tinfoil Swan.
That's true. The main thing that Travis is always already doing, I mean, he literally walks around with his shoulders up, his head down, his eyes squinted, like someone's about to hit him in the back of the head.
You did that all the time when I was interning for you.
Oh, man. The bitter truth is that Travis would wait until I wasn't paying attention while we were walking home from lunch, which I bought him every day at a pretty nice restaurant, and would push me into the wall of a building.
You had it coming.
So anyway, it is sort of, you have to kind of walk around like that nowadays. It is true. We're all walking around with targets on our backs, and because of that, we got to behave as though there's a target on our back and be careful.
Think about the fact that we're all just one head slap away from being in total disaster.
Indeed. And with that, our Tinfoil Swan.
Our paranoid takeaway to keep you safe online.
What is on your mind, Travis?
Many things, but I have to make a confession.
Travis, come on. You're perfect.
No, he's not.
Wow, thanks for the vote of confidence there, Beau. But seriously, I had never heard of check systems before David mentioned it in this episode.
Yep, me neither.
Wait, I finally know something you guys don't?
What is it?
Okay, look, check systems is really important, especially these days when there are so many crimes revolving around bank accounts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad there's something out there like a credit report for checking accounts and the like. I just had never heard of it.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it either. And also, by the way, I bet you $10 Adam hasn't used it.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Well, I did take a look at the site, and I have one issue with it.
Oh my gosh. Again, same. It is not a very intuitive site.
Yeah, I found it to be pretty confusing.
What's the confusion? I mean, the check system website can either give you a disclosure report or a consumer score. The disclosure report lets you know about any bank accounts that are associated with your identity. You can check it once a year for free. Did you hear that? Free.
Yeah. Listen, I got that. If someone opened an account in your name or is trying to pass bad checks on your account, or if you've had a lot of overdrafts, you see all that activity. Concept makes sense. The execution?
Yeah, not so much. And then there's the consumer score.
Yeah, well, the consumer score is supposed to gauge any bad activity on your accounts and ding you for them.
It's not unlike a credit score. I mean, it's based on your checking and savings account activity instead of credit. Unlike your credit score, it's on a scale of 100 to 899. And while it's good to be able to see where you stand on your finances, it can be really important to know if somebody opened a bank account in your name. Check systems can also tell you if a financial account in your name is being used to commit fraud.
Yeah, and ideally, it would just be a question of going to checksystems.com.
Yeah, but it is 100% not a question of going to checksystems.com. I did it. The site is not as easy to use as it should be, and I had no idea where, what I was doing or why I was there when I was there.
Same, but there was one silver lining that I found, and I was kind of banging my way into signing up and checking my score, and then when I finally got there, it did tell me that I already had a security freeze in place. So without my PIN, you can't really open a new account in my name, at least.
Well, I mean, that's good. When I went there, Travis, I found they didn't have enough information about me to make a call. So I was like, okay, so I guess there's no fraud at least, right? Here's the thing. I guess it's worth making it a part of your digital hygiene. Check systems, get better at what you do, man. You guys are really kind of a little rough around the edges. In fact, I would have to say, if you're going to use it now, you might want to have a professional walk you through it. And don't call me.
That's a good idea. And most insurance companies and many employers now offer identity protection and identity theft remediation services as a benefit. And if they do, somebody else, a professional, is going to be able to handle the confusing parts for you.
But check systems, again, why don't you just make it less confusing?
And that's our tinfoil swan. What the Heck with Adam Levin is a production of Loud Tree Media. You can find us online at adamlevin.com and on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Adam K. Levin.
Behind every empire are the people history tried to forget. Lost Roman Heroes tells the stories of the remarkable characters who shaped Rome from its mythical beginnings to its final fall.
Each episode blends armchair storytelling, sharp historical insight, and a bit of humor to bring these lost figures to life. From generals to scientists, from rebels to empresses, from priests to politicians, these lost Roman heroes have one thing in common.
They stood up for civilization when the bad guys threatened, and in doing so, they changed the course of human history. If you're into history that's vivid, surprising, and deeply human, this show's for you.
Behind every great meal is a person with a story to tell. Hear them on Culinary Characters Unlocked, the podcast that reveals the lives behind the food. Hosted by me, David Page, Emmy Award-winning journalist and creator of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, as I talk with everyone from culinary legends to mom-and-pop standouts about the creativity, grit, and passion that shape the food we love. Follow Culinary Characters Unlocked on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.